I've got nothing prepared, but I thought it would be good to share a little bit today about what the Lord has done for me. For two main reasons. The first and the most important being that we give God the glory. And as Aaron said, we often talk about the goodness of God. But I can say that in this last 3 months, as many of you will know, I've been going through a difficult time. It's been very difficult at times. But I can testify that God is a faithful God, and that we can put our faith and trust in Him and not be disappointed. As you all know, I went into hospital a week past Wednesday. And one of the first things the consultant asked me was, "Mr. Trench, when did you last have your apixaban, which is a particular medication I take?" Oh, I said, on Monday. Oh, he says, "I don't know whether we'll be able to operate today or not. Because the medication's a blood thinner, and he says, you've got to be offered at least 48 hours for us to operate safely." And it was as if he'd hit me with a sledgehammer. You know, I'd been preparing for this mentally, psychologically, because I'm not a great lover of hospitals due to experiences I had when I was a little boy. And I remember the nurse in her black uniform, "Eat that dinner up." You know, the matron. And in those days, a bedside manner wasn't what it is today. You know, and because of the medical condition I had in those days, involved a lot of injections. So I've grown up with a fear of hospitals and a fear of injections, anything medical. I never watched Holby, I never watched Emergency Ward 10, I never watched any of them. So when he said on Wednesday morning, "I don't think we'll be able to operate, we'll have to postpone the operation," I'll be honest, my soul just sank. And I was a little bit tearful. He says, "Hold on," he says, "I'll just go and check with one of my fellow consultants who deals with blood issues, just to see if we can or cannot go ahead, in his opinion." So he went away and he came back and he said, "We're going ahead with the operation." It would have been at least another 2 weeks before they would have had the opportunity to operate. And so I thank God that he intervened in that situation. So they operated on a Wednesday. I spent the night in the intensive care unit for observation. Then I spent the next 2 nights in a general ward. And the consultant came round Saturday morning. He says, "Mr. Trench, good news." He says, "We've got the tumour out and we've been able to reaffix your bowel. Would you like to go home?" You know, and he must have read my mind. or the fact that I had my suitcase packed. I don't know which it was, but I can look at the situation and I can see how God has moved in a wonderful way in this situation. He's been really good. And the main point that I want to bring this morning or today, I want to be like that leper who was healed. There were 10 of them who were healed, but only one came back to give thanks to the Lord. And it's a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord. So when things do happen, which are good, obviously blessed of him, I believe we have a duty to publicly declare what the Lord has done for us. And that's why I've come up today, just to give God the thanks. He's been so wonderful, and he's answered so many prayers. Which brings me to the second point, the second reason that I felt I needed to say something today. I know that you've all been praying for me. And there's been a lot of people praying for me, people in Australia, all over the world. And I think it's important that when God does move and answer prayer, that people are informed that he has answered prayer. So I'd just like to say to everyone who has prayed for me over these last weeks, God has answered your prayer. You might be thinking, my little tinsy-wincy little prayer. The fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And even though it was just a simple prayer that you uttered, it might well have been your prayer that made all the difference. And that's why I would encourage everyone today to take that attitude that God answered my prayer for Roydon. Yeah. And I believe that we need to take opportunities like what's happened to me as encouragements from God, that he is not a God who's a billion, trillion light years away and doesn't care. But he's a God who does care passionately for us as his people. And that he does answer our prayers. Not always the way we expect him to. Not always when we expect him to. But I believe God hears every prayer. And he will send an answer one way or the other. But there's an old chorus we used to sing. God has 1,000 ways to answer every prayer. And so I'm very, very encouraged standing here today that God has answered prayer. He's rewarded the faith of all of the people involved. My family, my friends, my brothers and sisters of Oasis Fellowship. And I'd just like to thank you all for prayer, for the prayers that you've said on my behalf. God has answered your prayer. Okay? And be encouraged and perhaps now we can start believing for greater things. I'm certainly going to look to that in my own personal life and expect God to answer more of my prayers. And seeing God move in this fellowship. And I believe he is. So those are the two reasons that I wanted to say something today. First of all, for God's glory. Always for his glory. We don't deserve anything. God doesn't owe us anything, but we owe him everything. And secondly, to encourage each and every one of you that God does answer prayer. He's answered my prayer, he's answered your prayer. Let's really get on board with that and say, Lord, there are other situations that need your intervention. And as a fellowship, we become a fellowship of believers who pray, believers who believe. So to God be the glory. Great things he has done. But he's the same yesterday, today and forever. And what he's done today, he can do tomorrow. There's no limit to what he can do. Praise God.